Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we take you on a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. And have you ever wondered how much weight you should use? What size kettlebells you should have? Well, hopefully we'll help you answer some of that. And you know, it's a little secret, Roger. This little secret I want to share with you. It's not the
That's
same for
creepy.
everybody. I know. Come closer. Let me whisper in your ear. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and he's Roger Parks. And today, let's get to the bottom of this. Roger, how you doing?
I'm good, but I am not getting in your van, sir.
Well, I don't have a van. It's an
Oh,
SUV,
well, that works
but
out well.
you don't have a choice in the matter. Um, so we get this question a lot and we see it a lot, and it's really kind of the first question everybody asks. How heavy of a kettlebell should I have? And Roger, it's not the heaviest one in the gym, and it's certainly not the lightest, or is it? What are we going to start with as far as knowing what kettlebell it is? I've heard there's magic numbers to things. There's like X amount of percentage and this amount of percentage. Is this true? Is there really magic out there, Roger?
No, there is only one kettlebell that everybody needs. It's a 20-kilo kettlebell. You should do all of your lifts with that, and
Oh,
you'll
I
be
got two of
strong
those.
and you'll live forever. Nope, just one.
Oh, wait. So I get rid of it and I only use it and I live forever?
Exactly.
How am I going to progress?
You don't need to progress. That's what
Okay,
science
I'm fine
shows.
where I'm
The,
fine
the
where I'm at.
studies the studies show. We'll link
Oh, I
them
love
below.
the study shows. Dr. So-and-so said in his book that this is the most important thing you can do.
There are no magic numbers. It's important. Before we have a conversation, we're going to give you some percentages and some things to guide your practice. It's really what we're trying to do, is help save you some time, give you some starting points. Anything that we suggest you do means that you should consider it. If it works for you, use it as a starting point. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't, stop or tinker with it a little bit. Don't just say, "Hey, this is what these dum-dums said. I'm going to do it and we're set forever." It's not how this works. There is a specific method to adaptation. There are going to be three things that you need. You're going to need stimulus, you're going to need nutrition, and recovery. Those are some basic things you'll need. But
How much
beyond
do
that,
those weigh?
the basic idea is the stimulus piece is what we're really looking at. We're going to talk about some percentages there, meaning how heavy should you go. But none of these numbers are magic, and you need to evaluate them against results of some sort. So as you're listening to this, think of a lift that you want to use. We'll probably use the press because that's the easiest one to talk about. That's why we talk about it a good bit. It's easy to see. We will differentiate between grinds and ballistics, but pick a lift, pick a context, and think about what your key performance indicator is going to be. If you're trying to press a bell for a certification, if it needs to be a particular size, half body weight, for example, that's
heavy.
a common press goal. Then you need to evaluate, are you getting faster? Are you getting closer to that half body weight press? The answer is yes, this is working. The answer is no. Then it's not working, and try something else. And a little bit of a spoiler, this is probably going to work for a time, just as almost everything works for a time, and then it stops. So the idea that there are magic numbers, that you should always follow them exactly, and that they're going to work indefinitely, it's just wrong. So consider the stimulus piece, just doing what's meaningful to make a change that is in line with your desired result. And if you do that and you're tracking these things, you can say, this is working. Sometimes things will work better than others. We'll talk a little bit about a situation where a little bit later where something worked for me and then it didn't. So keep this in mind. Numbers aren't magic. Sometimes this stuff helps and then it doesn't. So
Yeah, it could be like a
you want to think about that.
guidepost, like a kind of like a starting point sometime, or like a check-in point.
And where are you really in this process?
Yeah.
As you're acquiring strength, if you're brand new to kettlebells, then you can listen to this to know what's up ahead and maybe avoid doing some stupid things. But this is not going to be terribly relevant. You should focus on technical proficiency now. You should lift a bell that's comfortable, and you should lift it a lot. And that doesn't mean if you're a grown man and you could press a 24 kilo. It doesn't mean that you should press a 12 kilo because that's not going to be meaningful. But what it does mean is that you should pick something on the lower end of what is meaningful until you get good form. And then you can start worrying about intensity, which is really just a percentage of your one repetition max or whatever bell you can press over your head one time. So long-winded answer, no, there are not magic numbers. Take whatever strategy you decide to do and evaluate it against whatever it is you're trying to do. And it's really important to put that out there because this gets overlooked and people default to, oh, well, just tell me what to do. And then they follow a program and it doesn't work. Where I've had clients who have, talked to me about, oh, I got this other program and it didn't work. And then you look and it says, well, it said even right here, if this doesn't work, do that. Did you do that? Well, no. Well, then you didn't follow the program.
Yeah,
So
which seems a common thing most of the time.
it is. And that particular program even allowed for some progression, some adaptation. If this doesn't work, try that. It was well written, but my client was like, well, look, like it's great because the program had, if my client had followed the program, I never would have met him. But
yeah,
that that aside,
Hey,
the program was well written.
Yeah.
What was that?
I said we got mortgages too.
Yeah, we do. So that's the scoop with the magic numbers. There are no magic numbers, but these are numbers that are thoroughly grounded in repeatable science that is legitimate, verifiable, not ironclad, but these are reasonable starting points, and these are also consistent with our practice, with our clients' practice, and with other coaches who are good at what they do.
Yeah, and there's the let's get this out of the way real quick because those are valid points. You need good form. You want to make sure you recover. You want to make sure you get enough stimulus. But the question is always like, well, and I get this a lot too, especially with new kettlebell users, which bell should I get? And like, what weight? Tell me which one. And I'll often send a link and tell me if I'm way off here. And I'll usually tell a guy to grab, an average strong guy to grab like a 16 and a 24, probably a 20. And you can kind of progress within those ranges. We'll work with that 16 a lot just so you get that form. Maybe we need that heavier bell to help let those swings sink in and stuff like that. For your lady clients, Roger, what do you say to them?
I don't talk to women.
Okay, it shows he's an incel. Just kidding. He's married with 2 cats, everybody.
The conversation with women, it depends on what they're training for. I often will get women who are training for strong first, in which case I'll have them grab a 12 kilo bell and usually a 16. And,
Okay.
especially if 16 is their bell weight. So it really is going to be context dependent, but I don't think those guidelines are off. And it's a reasonable question to ask because kettlebells don't adjust the ones that we recommend you use. Adjustable kettlebells aren't awful, but the balance is a little different. So generally we recommend that you get, especially if you're doing hard style, we recommend you do a couple bells. So those bells will be fine in the beginning until you start to build, you've built your technical proficiency, and then you're going to go up from there. And if you're really in this stage where you're asking us what bell should you use, this podcast is not for you.
It might be a little bit too heady for you, right?
It's not that it's heady. It's just, it's farther than where you are. If you're to a point where you're just starting out, then, by all means listen and you can know what's coming up ahead. But if you're in the place where you're questioning, hey, what size bell should I get? Then this isn't for you. This is for the person who is like, it's time to buy some new kettlebells. I've progressed. I've gotten my technical proficiency. I've gotten some basics. I'm stronger than I already thought I could be. Now let me start to go higher, further. This is where we get into the pushing and increasing and improving. So we want to think about that context, that piece right there. And let's just throw it out there that we're limiting this to strength. There are other goals that you can pursue, but load is generally one that is really calibrated to strength. and then you can back off. You can go up or down depending upon, what it is specifically you need. But let's just limit this to strength. Otherwise, the conversation just becomes completely nonsensical.
Yeah, and the reality, just like Roger said, if you started kettlebells and you're into it and you've been doing it, you probably have a selection of ways to choose from. Inevitably, it's I give the starting point, and they're already, what should I get next, and this sort of goes along the thing. There is one number, Roger, that I want to talk about right away first, and it's the 80% rule of thumb. This sounds ominous. What does that even mean? Is it
Uh, it,
80% of, like the most you can lift, half of what you can lift? What are we talking about here?
it's not ominous. It's an easy guidepost, and it's a useful percentage. So again, to be completely clear, these numbers aren't going to work for everybody. They might not work for a lot of people, but it's something that you can start and see if this is working for you, if this is meaningful. 80%, there are two times that I would recommend you consider 80%. The first one is with what's called intensity. That's going to be a percentage of your one repetition max. So let's use real numbers here. We'll
Okay.
use we can use Jeremiah with his 48 kilo press as his max. Okay, that'll be your max, right?
Okay.
So so we're going to use that as kind of a jump off point. So if we're looking at 48 kilos being what he can press over his head one time, then we're looking at 80% of that. So do the math real quick. What is that for the good people at home? Which
I
bell
think
should you be using?
the 32, or is it the 36? Should I get the calculator out? You didn't tell me
You
there was
you
any math,
should,
Roger.
because this is important, because you're not
Okay.
going to get an easy answer. It's not going to
All right.
fit neatly. So
All
there's
right.
a little bit of a decision here.
48 times, what are we doing? 80%?
80%.
It's a 38.4 kilogram bell, Roger, and I happen to have one of those. So it's the
So
36 probably is the training weight right there, right?
probably, or you could go up a little bit and do the 40. So
40,
there's
but
already a decision that you have to make here. So you're probably going to go down in most cases. You're going to round down and you're going to use the 36. 80% is a good number because it's well within the strength range. If you look at the research, it shows that you can get stronger, and we're going to define stronger as the ability to lift heavier things. Really
okay.
simple definition. It will be volume dependent, how often you do it, and we'll talk a little bit about that piece. But if you lift something that is at least 65% of that maximum, okay, do that math again for us. So what's
Okay, yeah, I was
65%?
actually, as soon as you said that, I was like, I should just keep this calculator open.
So if you can do something that is at
So
least
that's the
65,
31.2. So that's a
okay,
32
so that's a
ultimately, or the
32. So
28 if you
yeah,
round down. But
well, but let's round up in this situation.
yeah,
Let's
because
say
we're
in
trying
one
to get
situation we
stronger.
round down, and one
Yeah,
we round up.
that's
So
diplomatic.
so what we're looking at is, as long as he's pressing a 32 kilo bell with sufficient volume, he will be making strength gains. Probably. That doesn't. It's not a guarantee. It may be that he doesn't do sufficient volume, or it may be that he only responds to a higher intensity. These are averages. This is, some people sometimes will respond to anything between 65% of their one rep max, all the way up obviously to 100% and beyond. If if you do 110% of your one rep max, then odds are
You
you're going to
gotta,
get stronger from that lift.
you'll have a new max.
Obviously. So we want to look at this as the meaningful range of stimulus. Now below that, right? If he's doing a 24 kilo bell, could he gain strength from pressing a 24 kilo bell? He could. It would be based on either an increase in hypertrophy, and the increase in hypertrophy gives him the ability to move more weight because he's got more muscle to do it, or he could increase his technical proficiency because he does a lot of reps and he tightens up his form. It's theoretically possible, but it's not likely. So I don't recommend you go that light if your goal is strength. Doesn't mean you never touch your 24 kilo bell. Just means if you're doing that and you want to maybe gain some ancillary strength, probably do something like a complex where your goal is strength endurance as opposed to pure strength. That way, you're still getting another adaptation, and you're not chasing strength directly with that, but you may get a little bit of benefit. So let's restrict the conversation to between 65% of your one rep max and above. So if you do sufficient volume with that amount of your one repetition max, you will get stronger, probably. And again, if you don't, you're going to need to adapt. So let's
Yeah.
ground that there. If you do a lot of reps with the 65, then you're going to be at the lower end of the scale, which means either A, it may not work at all, or B, it's only going to work for a limited time. So you probably don't want to spend too much time near the 65% end. Let's say you go up to 95% or even 100, but let's stick with 95%. Now, what would that be?
I'm glad you asked. That's a 45.6 kilo bell.
So
So we're looking at a
let's
44 maybe, right?
sure.
If we're because like
So
up above that is 48. And
okay. So you tell me, if you do a lot of work with a 44 kilo bell, you do your pressing week in, week out, are you going to get stronger? How do you feel after these workouts?
yeah, I would say I would I would probably be more worn out than worked out. It would add up. I wouldn't have any fluctuations. I'd have a hard time recovering, I think, after, let's say I'm pressing 3 times a week, and if it's the 44 every time, I'm gonna show up and it's not gonna be able to happen. It's just not gonna happen. So now I've lost out on a workout, and I may only be able to get fewer reps in on that over the course of the thing anyways as well, of course of the week, right?
Sure, which is overall less stimulus, and that's really what Jeremiah is talking about. Is this is all going to be kind of a balancing act. You need to get sufficient stimulus, but you need to consider recovery. So when people do serious strength work, they don't tend to stay in that 90% range very often. Maybe they go up there more. So let's do the hypothetical situation that he's training for a half body weight press for a certification. He's going to do a lot of his work not at the 65% end of the spectrum, not at the 95% end of the spectrum, but in that 80%. He's going to split the difference. What that's going to do is it's going to give him sufficient stimulus without overdoing it, giving him sufficient time to recover, because the recovery piece is important. One, you need to get, as he mentioned, enough reps to make meaningful change, to improve your technique, to cause the muscles to grow, to cause your brain to get better at producing strength. Maybe your midsection needs to turn on, get a little bit stronger in order to handle those bigger bells. But you aren't going to overdo it, so you can't recover from it. So perhaps if he uses a 44 and he tries to do it 3 times a week, maybe he gets, you know, 2 presses, that's it. Maybe the second time he gets 3, that's it. And maybe last time he gets 1 and doesn't feel all that great. That's not a lot of volume over the week. So those are not going to be really quality touches. It would make a lot of sense for him to go back down um, and use either a 36 or even a 40, where he's going to
Mhm.
get more touches. So in the beginning of this program, he's probably going to spend more time at that 80%. So he's going to do a lot of work with the 36. And then as he gets closer, maybe to certification day, and he wants to test himself out, then he's going to start sprinkling in more 40s, 44s, and he may even try to max out. Most serious strength athletes do not try to max out. Their max out happens on
That day.
certification day. That's
So it's
generally
like
what happens.
peak timing and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, if you look at, let's say, powerlifters, everyone's got a different way of doing it, but generally speaking, powerlifters don't do a max right up, close to their competition. Some do, many do not, because they don't want to tire themselves out, especially right before a competition. You don't know how long it's going to take you to recover from a lift. And I've been
Yeah.
in a situation where, a lift feels really, really easy, and then I go to do it again. It's like, oh, this is this is a little heavier than I thought.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's what happened to me a couple years ago when I was doing a half body weight press for a 44. I was able to, and I happened to press it leading up to the attempt. And then when I got there, I was thrown off. I ultimately did get it, but it was a journey. And you know, so you get your one rep max. Roger, I got a question though. What about people that don't have a 1 rep max, and can you use the 5 rep max? Is there a range and you can play these same guidelines off of? Is it similar? Is that, nothing to be concerned with?
Yes and no. So the 5 rep max is going to be important, especially for pressing or kettlebell grinds, because we like to use ladders and we like to use 1 to 5 ladders. It's a feature of the system. One of the reasons why we're talking about this is the common thought for some people, not necessarily coaches, but people, enthusiasts,
Mm,
will say, "Oh, I did a ladder. It's time to go up." It's like, "Oh, you just did this ladder one time and already like you're
yep, I
you're
got
on
it.
the internet ordering
N
kettlebells." That's
Nailed it.
not that's not what we need to do. So that's why we're talking about this. So first of all, do your best to try to figure out what your 1 rep max is, assuming that you built sufficient tissue tolerance, you're technically capable. It's a good idea to know what it is you can do, especially if you want to know what you're chasing, right? If you're like, "Oh, I want to do a 1 rep max." Okay, well, what's the heaviest you can do? I don't know. I only have a 16 kilo bell. Well, go press some other bells
And
and
come
go up,
back.
and then you press a 28, but you don't press a 32. Then your 32 becomes your goal. Now you've got something to measure it against. So your 1 rep max is going to be what we talk about, intensity. That's what most people refer to the load as the intensity of the lift. But you can't underestimate the effect of effort, meaning how hard are you pushing, how much effort are you exerting during a workout. And that's where we're getting into multiple lifts. That's where we're getting into your 5 rep max. What would you say your 5 rep max is?
I would say right now, I probably could 5 rep max the 40 with appropriate effort.
And
You
and
know what I
and I
mean?
would I, w- I would say that that tracks. When I have my 48 press, I have, which I sometimes do, sometimes don't. I would say 40 is my 5 rep max for sure. So this is important to think about. What do you feel after you just press the 40 for 5 reps?
I feel like I did a lot of work. I
Yeah, you're
feel
you're
like, "Oh, there it was," 'cause like I said, it's that effort part, right? Everything's
yeah,
tight, everything's working, and I'm really grinding it.
sure, you're exhausted and you might even be done with your workout for the day.
Yeah,
So it's
usually.
an all-out effort. It's a max out. Even though it's not a 1 rep max, it's your 5 rep max and you're working really, really hard. And if you're not working really, really hard, then it's not your 5 rep max. And my guess is you couldn't do 6 reps with the 40, at least not right now.
No.
It would be a stretch, and if you did, it'd be a serious feat. So you want to think about how you feel at the end of this lift, and why a 5 rep max is relevant is because it fits neatly into the ladder scheme. So we're going to use that as a guidepost, because many people do. It's a way to structure your workouts. But if you're doing a 5 rep max, your your 5 reps max is not going to be obviously as heavy as your 1 rep max, right?
Yeah.
It's for most people, when people look at, like, let's say 80%, a lot of the charts, which are not always going to be right, will say that you've got about 6 to 8 reps with your 80%. So if you're doing a 5 rep max, it's going to be above 80%,
Yeah.
assuming this chart holds for you, and it may not, right?
Well, the
So
40 would be above the 80%, right?
yeah,
Because we said
exactly right.
36.
You'd be above that 80% threshold. So what I would suggest is find your 1 rep max to gauge your intensity and to guide your effort, but then find your 5 rep max and then back off of that. Even if you use 80% of that 5 rep max, I calculated this earlier, I think it was like 67% of my 1 rep max or something like that, using kettlebells. So what that
That's what you
means,
ended up with? It was
I
like
think it was like
60%?
67, I think it was something like
Okay,
that.
yeah. Yeah, you said between 60 and 70% range, can still build strength and size, and obviously that worked for you?
Well, usually the number I see is 65. I don't know about 60.
Okay. Okay,
So, but
60
either
percent
way, 67 is above 65%.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I'm using 20% of my 5 rep max, or I'm sorry, if I'm using 80% of my 5 rep max, well, why am I doing that? Why I'm doing that is because it still puts me within the threshold to gain strength with my 1 rep max, assuming those numbers work for me, assuming the 65 to 100%, or let's just call it 65 to 95%, and assume we're not going to be training with our max weight. Okay, so I'm still within those margins. I'm going to need to do more volume, but I'm not going to go right at a heavier bell, because if I'm doing my 5 rep max, that represents 100% of the effort that I can do for 5 reps. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to need to recover. That's why I recommend taking a step off of that. Do 80% of your 5 rep max. That way you're still within the ranges that should be meaningful to create a strength stimulus, but you're not going to be so beat up and under recovered that you're not going to be able to get your volume and your touches in over the week. That also gives you room to grow. You don't need to stay there. You might stay there for a week or two, and then you can bump it up a little bit, or you can start mixing in your 65 or your 67% bell with, let's say it's a 32. Let's say you can do a ladder. Let's
Okay.
say you're progressing, and for your bottom rungs you do a 36, and for your top rungs, let's say 1, 2, and 3, you do 36. For 4 and 5, you do a 32, and then
That's
you work your way
exactly
back down,
67%.
and then you back down from 32 for the top rungs, and then go up to 36. Let's say you progress even more. Let's say you use your 40 kilo bell, rungs 1 and 2, and then for 36 you do rungs 3 and 4, and then for your 32 you do 5. So you can start playing with this. You don't always need to use the same bell for everything, but what I'm trying to get at is you can layer in some percentage increases and not just say, oh, well, I can do a ladder with a 40, so that's my ladder size bell. If you're always at the top end of that threshold, then you're going to top out very fast. You're going to get very, very tired. So let's say you're relatively new-ish to kettlebell training, and you're like, oh, I just hit a 1 to 5 ladder with a 20. Let me go order a 24. No, there's a lot of room left to grow when we look at these percentages, when you look at this 80% rule. And when we think about the 65 to 95% threshold that you can train within relative to your 1 rep max, you still have a lot of growing you can do with that 20 kilo bell. You need to allow time for adaptation. You need to allow time for recovery. And as you're doing these reps, absolutely, at some point, your 32 kilo bell is no longer going to be 67% of your 1 rep max, no matter how many, if you're doing 5 reps. Then you're going to,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, now this is, this is only equal to, 54% of what I can do.
Yeah.
Then
It's
you're
just
going to
not
need to
quite
start
as
bumping
much.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where you might start bumping up. And, what a lot of people and really, really good coaches will say, do it until it's easy and then go up. But people don't have that patience. You don't need to get out the spreadsheets or the calculator. Just do it until it starts to get easy.
Yes.
And then start sprinkling something that gets a little bit harder. But a lot of people want to jump right to the heaviest bell. So that's what the 80% rule is. So you can look at it in terms of intensity relative to your 1 rep max, or you can think about 80% of your 5 rep max, which is a good bell to start your ladder training with as you want to get stronger, and then go up from there. But if you start your ladder training with your 5 rep max, then you're going to be maxing out every session. Maybe not in terms of your absolute intensity, but in terms of your effort.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to be able to recover as well. Your overall strength gains are going to be slow. Plus your workouts are going to be shitty. You're not going to
Yeah.
enjoy them. They're going to be hard. Whereas
Then you're not going to show up and
exactly right. And we won't even get into the scenario of injury, because maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But even if it doesn't, why do you want to constantly ram your head up against a wall?
unless you're into that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Well,
judgment.
I will say the most success I've had with achieving the 1 rep maxes and the higher bells has been using that exact prescription that you laid out there. Is heavier in the lower rungs, hitting that I guess that 67% weight in the higher rungs and fluctuating throughout. And well, what do you know? Next thing, everything just keeps going up, and then all of a sudden, my lower rungs with the 44, and I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to do this right now. And then I call my friend Roger and be like, hey, I did the 44. He's like, what are you, an idiot? You still have 2 weeks until you got to do that in person. Settle down.
But let's use your personal story. And I've
Okay.
seen this. So you're as strong now as you've ever been with your press. And
Oh,
again,
yeah.
this is a lift that he's
The
had a hard time with.
strongest. 44
So
twice. You saw it.
so what are you doing now differently than you did before? It was using those smaller bells. Traditionally, what he would do, and I'm telling on you and making
Don't
fun
tell
of
on
you a
me.
little bit
That's all right.
because that's
You've
what I
seen it
do.
all. Yeah. Good friends.
He starts a program and he really starts to do well. He starts to feel strong, and then he sees these big bells. It's almost always when he comes over to train with me, especially if I'm lifting it. He wants to like he's diving for a plate of cookies.
Jealousy
Ooh,
washes over me.
let me lift it.
Yeah.
And how many times have you tweaked your back doing that?
Oh, yeah. You know, back in the day, it was the norm. I'd come
Yeah.
over, I'd try it, my mid back would hurt, and I'd be like, "Damn, now I can't breathe because I feel like I crushed a rib with
So
my muscles contracting."
so you lose what? You lose a week of training,
Yeah, it was just so silly, so stupid.
and then you
You know,
get a
I may
little
look
defeated.
smart, but
You get a little defeated, and that's what happened. But now, after having a solid conversation with yourself and working at these lower rungs, his press looks awesome. He's stronger than he's ever been, and he's lifting heavier things now. So this stuff does work, but it's about giving yourself enough reps with a reasonable weight to grow. Just don't go after the hardest thing you can do all the time, because the hardest thing you can do represents 100%, whether it's
yeah,
your intensity relative to your max or your maximum effort. The hardest thing you do equals 100%, and we do not train at 100%. We test at 100%. We don't train at it. That's not training. That's dumb shit things that you shouldn't be doing.
yeah. And don't be influenced by the people on the internet to always go for that heavier bell because you saw some jackhole doing it, because they probably already spent the time there, and that's what they're doing. And oh, to your point, one of the best things, Roger, is throughout this process and using those lighter weights is you keep that impeccable form, you get better. That all translates into being able to handle the bigger maximum press and to do that technique. So don't rush that. Use that as part of your process, right? That's the most important thing. You want to make sure you're not looking crazy, but it's okay to look crazy on that 1 rep max a little bit,
A
right?
little bit. There's so much that goes into lifting heavier things, and the load that you lift is one of those things. You can't underestimate to the sense of threat that your nervous system perceives. If you go into a workout always going, redlining and always going toward those maxes, your nervous system will eventually start to guard and be a little wary. It will decrease your strength because it doesn't want you to hurt yourself. So don't go after the heavier weights all the time and increase that threat, which can lock you down. You want to go into your training with a good feeling and know that you're going to succeed in your lifts. You're not going to miss reps, and each rep is you getting stronger. Why are you making it harder than it needs to be? Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying you should never lift heavy. One of the first times I think it was actually the first time I trained for my half body weight press, thanks to someone who will remain nameless, who transcribed a program incorrectly and gave me a lot more volume at heavy weight than I was supposed to have.
We're not
I
going to name
ended
names. We'll just say random names, and you have to decide.
So yeah, I ended up doing a lot more heavy presses with a 40-kilo bell than I was expecting. I actually thought that I broke my forearm from too
That's good.
much pressure against. I didn't have a guard at the time, so I was just jacking up press after press after press with the 40, and I really did think that I broke my forearm. And I went back and looked at this program that I'd been doing, and I realized that the volume, I think, was like either doubled or tripled
Yeah,
than
it
what I was
wasn't
supposed
great.
to be doing.
Whoever gave you that loser. Only listen to
So
them sometimes.
but what that did prove, though, is even though I shouldn't have been training at that high intensity, I did get better. I did.
Yeah.
I got my press pretty quickly. But what's interesting, and this is why I'm telling the story, I'm not advocating that you overdo it and that it works, because sometimes it does, but it usually does not. Interestingly, the next time I tried to use that higher volume strategy with more weight, where I would just, every workout I would pick up, a 40 plus kilo bell and do a couple reps, it just didn't work the same. It just did not work as well. I very quickly came to a plateau that I didn't hit before, and what I needed to do was back it off, and then do more work with the 36. I blew right past that plateau, and that worked. So what worked in one situation did not work in another. Nothing wrong with lifting heavier weight, but it's something that you should do sporadically.
Yeah. Take your time with it all. Take your time. Take your time. All right. Well, does that cover primarily some guidelines for something like a press?
Yeah,
Is there anything you
a
need to add
grind,
to that?
a grind
A
lift.
grind. Yeah. Yeah, I would say grind lift. I mean, like the most common grind lift that you're going to max out is a press for kettlebells, usually.
I think
Mhm.
so, and we could have a whole episode on whether or not we're really. I guess if you're getting into a double kettlebell press, those can be pretty challenging. But when you're
Yeah,
when you're
that's
looking at
different.
the when you're looking at the loads that you can move, moving 240s is challenging, but I can move more on a bar than I can with two bells. So, that gets to be, we start getting in the weeds and talking about other things, the position and cleaning the bells and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
this
There's
will
other
apply
factors.
best. What was that?
There's other factors, is what you're
For
saying.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
This will apply best to the press. So that's why we're using
Okay.
that there.
All right. And Roger is press master. Remember, we talked about this a few episodes ago, maybe 15 episodes ago. That's his rap name, Press Master Press. All right, let's switch it up. Let's go for some ballistics here. The swing, snatch. Do the same rules apply? Are we trying for 80%? I know I don't know, do you ever max out your swing, Roger?
It depends on how you define that.
Okay.
I have
Let's
a
define it.
Well, I have a specific definition for a swing, and because a swing is a ballistic lift, I want it to have a float. There are degrees of ballistic. There are degrees of, hey, this is ballistic because you're using momentum. It's what you would call, it has a free flight phase, even though if it doesn't look like it because your arms are attached to it. For me, that's not a swing. If I don't see a defined float, then it's not a swing. It's rare. I've seen people with, big 100-kilo bells have a little bit of a float, good on them. But
Yeah.
usually what happens is I see, look at me, I'm swinging a 100-kilo bell. And it's like, there's no swing at all. There's constant tension. It's a lot of arm. It's a lot of back.
A
And
lot of veins in the neck.
yeah, it's very little momentum, if anything. So if we started off by saying, we want these swings to be technically proficient, then sure, there's value in maxing out swings and doing, what's the heaviest bell I have? It's 52,
52 or
56.
something like that. So yeah, it's heavy
It's
enough.
heavy, right?
Yeah.
But we can make it float. We
Yeah.
don't do a ton of swings with it, but it does float. And is there value there? Sure, there's value there. But you have to think about, why are you doing your ballistic lifts anyway? And you get a whole different stimulus, different, the muscles are behaving in a completely different way. And if you're doing this type of lift, you're doing it for a reason. And I think that you're better off doing these quick lifts, what are called quick lifts, quickly. I think that makes more sense. Even though doing some odd reps with a heavier bell will make you stronger and will help get your other reps a little faster. So there's value there.
Yeah.
But we're looking at the percentage, the proportion. So just like I would say before, most, whereas you want to keep a lot of your reps in that 80% range, this is going to be a lower range than that. And this is generally a body weight recommendation. And again, there's going to be a huge range here, but a good place to start is 30% of your body weight.
Okay. So 30% of my body weight. That's quite a bit for me right now, Roger. I'm currently what you would consider a heavyweight. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's a lot of muscle. I did a DEXA scan. Uh, so if we're going 30%, if you're 185 pounds, that's like 24 to 28 kilos.
You're not
If you're
185 pounds.
Yeah, that's what I am in my brain.
Okay.
No, well, and to that point, so if I look at what I am now, and let's say I'm doing it on my lightest day in
Mhm.
my in the buff, as you will.
Okay.
All right, pre-breakfast.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna go 215 times 30%. That means I'm using a 64. Oh, no, wait, never mind. That's a hold scratch that. I got to convert the weight to kilos because that does not work. I'm like a
That would be a
64 pound,
20 28 kilo bell.
28. Thank you, sir. 28 kilo. And that might be good. Will it give me uh, a chance to make it move quickly and have that snap and have that flow? Yeah. Will it be enough to stimulate like real leg drive or require real leg drive? If it's two arm, maybe. It might
I
be a little
I'm
light for
I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna
okay.
say it will. And you'll have a little wiggle room. I think that you would also be able to go up to a 32 as well, but you're very
Mhm.
experienced and you have really solid swings. I do think that it would be enough, especially if your goal is to crush the bell, not just to swing it, but to actually really crush it and make it move as quickly as you possibly can. And the reason why I wanted you to go through and do the conversion is when you have a big, strong, very experienced kettlebell coach who can get benefit from a 28 kilo or a 32 kilo two hand swing, then this should give you an idea that just because you can swing it doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah.
And that's the take home there, because if I'm the same way, I've tested this. I do not respond well to a lot of heavy ballistic training. It doesn't mean I don't do it. I just my response is I respond a lot faster and better when I do that mid-range 30 to 40% of body weight, and um, that's why I stick there. But now you're also talking about a two arm swing, right? Well, what
Yeah.
about a one arm swing at a 28?
Well, and that was I was gonna mention that, and I mostly do my work with the 28 single arm, and I'll do, that same thing. I try to crush it, I try to get it moving. I do apply a lot of effort in those because I wanna get that benefit out of it, and that feels exactly right, right? It's where the 24 might feel a little too light sometimes. The 32 could press on a little heavy. 36 single arm to get all the effort I want out of it is a little bit heavier than I want it to be. And the 28 just feels right. I find myself no problems. I don't argue with myself when they're on my plan for the day and I have to look at it and be, okay, I got to do these. I'm like, hey, this is good. I like this. I can really make these work. I also do swing like Roger mentioned. You do got to swing heavy sometimes to build the muscle, and I have some bells that I do swing heavy with, and I'll be honest, I don't really like how my body feels after swinging heavy, and it just bothers my body. I don't know what it is. It just doesn't agree with me. So I don't do it that often. I'd rather deadlift heavy, to be honest.
Sure. And everybody's going to have their unique tweaks, and that's why we're saying take some of these as starting points, and then move on for that. You can already see that there's going to be a difference between a two arm swing and a one arm swing for many people. Personally, I feel I can do two arm swings with the 28. I do feel better at a 32, and I did clock it. And what was the thing? It was the push band.
Yeah.
The 32 was better for me. So
Mhm.
I will
For
use
two
that
arm.
more for two arm, not for one.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Then you start to get into the size of the bell relative to the size of your body. And right now we're different weights, but Jeremiah and I often weigh a similar amount, and we're just built very differently. So he can handle, well, at least with ballistics, he can handle a bigger bell than I can. It'll start to bully me and push me around because I'm not very big, or at least I'm not very tall.
He's
So
got short little legs, everybody, but he's got a huge heart.
so these these things, you know, you're going to want to personalize, but a 30% of your body weight is a good place to start and move from there. And again, this assumes that you're going to be doing ballistic lifts as ballistic lifts. If you're going to use kettlebells, then you should use them for ballistics. This is what kettlebells do better than, at least swings, better than
Yeah.
any other implement. Arguably, they are as beneficial um, for most people than other, even barbells for ballistic training. Now, when you really get big, strong people doing barbell work, then those ballistics are fantastic too, but they're different. So this is a feature of the kettlebell system that you're not going to get somewhere else. So if you're going to invest in this type of training, then keep your ballistics ballistic and start with this and then work your way up or down as necessary. You're going to, you know, if you're going to move into, let's say, endurance, you're going to want to back that, you'll want to back that off a little bit. Maybe you'll, you know, maybe you'll do even more like 25% of body weight. If you want to go heavy, you'll go up to 45, 50. Sure, try it, give it a shot. But most of your work, just like with your grinds, you want to stick in that 80% range. You probably want to stick right around 30% for your ballistics.
And of course, if you're trying to get better with your technique, lighter is probably the way to go, at least initially. Um, I'd say more so even with like something like the snatch. The If you have technique to develop, you know, don't be afraid to stay on that lower end, and then you can work it up. Uh, and
I would agree with that.
yeah, and
You know,
so we talked. Go ahead.
well, one thing I want to point out is sometimes with your, you know, you're teaching a snatch, it's a new lift, it can be a bit complex. It's not uncommon for me to give somebody a lighter weight, and once they get over that, you know, I think there's a bit of a fear factor there. Once they get over that and they feel comfortable with the lift, I give them something heavier, and they often have a technique improvement because they feel the resistance a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, but in the beginning lighter, and then yeah, give someone something a bit heavier, and then things clean up a bit.
And remember, with your ballistics, it's not going to be that 1 to 5 sort of ladder, those rep ranges, stuff like that. You're going to be in the higher rep ranges. So consider that when you're choosing the bell or how you progress with that bell. Um, don't just say, "Oh, I did 100 swings. I'm ready for the next bell up." It's sort of the same thing with the ladder. Let the time train you. Is Rogers one of his key tenements? Did I say that right? Uh, Testify. Testicles. Tenements. 10 plus 10 is 20.
I was gonna shut this down. let the, let the, let the bell train you. Let time and let volume do what it does. You know, rely on consistency rather than intensity, because that's generally going to be the way to go.
Yeah, time's on your side. Anything as far as like choosing that right weight and tracking that with the ballistics that we need to go into? Or does that feel like that's a good starting place? That's a good kind of way you can kind of gauge it. How do I know when I should move up with that ballistic?
The
When
same
it
same
feels
kind of
easy?
deal. Technical proficiency. You know, it's not everybody, but I do know somebody who, or I do know of people who have started with, let's say, you know, their snatch test weight, 100 reps in 5 minutes is 24, and like, this just gets easy, so I'm gonna do a 28. And they tend to be longer, whippy people, not built
Mhm.
like me, built more like you, and they just find a way to really get the bell moving without a ton of effort. I know people who have done the snatch test with a 32, and it's not all that hard. I don't I
That's
don't foresee
impressive.
myself ever being able to do that. I'm
Yeah.
strong, but it's just not in my makeup.
Nor do I have the desire. That sounds like a hell on earth. I'll be honest. All
But
right.
for some people it's fine. So, you
Yeah.
know, but even within the context of the snatch test, you're working with a bell of a particular weight, or your goal is to work with a bell of a particular weight. So, you know, you can even play with percentages off of that. If you're, you know, when I'm training for a snatch test, I need to do a 24, and I will often do work with a 16 or a 20. You know, I'll start to get, you can still get some cardiovascular stimulus and really, you know, get your technique dialed in. I give myself plenty of time, so I don't need to go right to the 24. I'll have a couple days where I just like, oh, let's do a little workout, let's do 100 with the 16, and I feel it. It gets me sweaty, but it's not terribly challenging. But it leads up to more work. And when I start at the lower end, it gives me somewhere to go.
Yeah, builds that confidence too. You're
Hmm.
like, "Oh, I
And it's
got that. That's easy. Yeah, let's keep
Yeah.
going."
So I don't want to hate the workout. I don't want to hate my training session. So then when that feels easy, I go up to a 20. And if I
Yeah,
have enough time, this is what I do.
yeah, and it works.
But that being said, you can get some benefit from going above. If your goal is to do it with a 24 bell, then do some reps with a 28 or a 32. You don't need to do a lot, but do some triples.
And
That
the
that will make
idea
the
that
24.
24 feel lighter, right?
Yeah,
That's the idea from
exactly
that, yeah.
right. It'll feel a lot lighter. It'll give you more intensity, and you'll be training a slightly different adaptation.
Yeah, I like that. We should talk about that on another episode, how lifting the heavier weights makes the other weights feel lighter, and that could benefit you. For today, I wanted to say there's no magic numbers, right, Roger? Kind of track this and adjust based on the results you're achieving. Take your time with it. Don't just because you did the ladder doesn't mean you get the new belt. Um, Effort matters as much, or if not more, than just the weight. Because if it's super hard, the weight isn't very heavy, you should stay there. you know, if it's super hard and the weight is light, well, it's probably going to continue to be super hard. Um, you put a note here that strength is built by tension and volume, not just by maxing out. We covered that. You're lifting significant amounts over time, and that you shouldn't max out every time. You're training within that range, that 65 for the press, that 65 to 95% range to get the adaptations, to not leave yourself trashed, and to allow yourself to progress. Um, Adjust your load based on your experience. If you're a beginner, you can start with those lighter weights and understand that technical proficiency that's required to lift these a lot and to be able to actually go up and get a 1 rep max. And it's probably a good idea to get a 1 rep max eventually, whatever that is. It gives you something to train for, especially if you're not somebody who's going for a certification or something like that. The 1 rep max is a checkpoint. It's an achievement. We've all played those video games. I've been playing a lot of Mario Kart lately, Roger, and getting those checkpoints is great. If you get those checkpoints before my son, you're doing well. And for your ballistics, again, make it float. 30% or so of your body weight is probably a great starting point. And don't forget, number one rule: convert your weight to kilos and then figure it out. Otherwise, you're like, oh, 66 kilo bell. Wow. That's a lot. And so if you don't know how to do this, 2.2 pounds per kilo. So just do the math. All right. Or ask the AI.
Ask the
and
AI.
yeah, ask the AI and they'll tell you somewhat of a right answer most of the time, occasionally. And yeah, use this as a guide. It's all case dependent, context dependent on who you are. Anything else, Roger?
No, sir.
All right, that's good. All right. Well, be sure to, as always, download the Bells app and try some heavy weights with that. In fact, if you use the app and check out workout history, it'll tell you how many kilos you lifted. It could be in the thousands, folks. All right. And if you like this podcast, please give it a review. Please give it a share. It helps other people that might want to benefit from this too. And frankly, it would do us a solid. And who doesn't want to do us a solid? All right. That's it. Stay strong, everybody.